I am pumped. And then we're going to have the Titanic themes. Well, not the Titanic theme song, but you know what I mean. The song that you want to put at the end. You have to send that to me.
No, we're not going to put that at the end.
With the flute.
No, we're not going to do that. Because, no. Just no.
Just no.
Ladies and gentlemen, technical difficulties beyond our control are delaying our presentation.
Now, good morning to everyone in my night audience.
Station operates on a frequency of 1,460 kilohertz. The completion of general mobilization.
All right, Thomas.
Ready?
Tell me everything you have to know. Well, what am I saying? Tell me everything you know about the Titanic that we will be discussing today.
First, I wish to welcome everybody to our Titanic Special, where it's mostly going to be me talking. If you don't like me, I recommend you click off and come back next week.
And if you don't like me, probably listen to this one, but don't listen to next week.
So, last 2 episodes, we talked about the building of the ship and everything that went on. The episode before, we talked about it hitting the iceberg. So, we left off at midnight, April 15th, 1912. Ooh, ah.
Dum dum dum.
The ship's architect and captain are now fully aware that the ship is sinking, but they're still waiting to get confirmation. Thomas Andrews, he needs to make sure, right? He needs to be absolutely sure this ship is sinking. So, the watertight doors are closed, the ship is flooding, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. As for the passengers, they just think the ship shook a little, and there's nothing to worry about. Most of them actually slept right through the collision.
Meanwhile, hell is breaking loose.
Yeah, below decks, it's absolute pandemonium. But most people have no idea anything's happening. So, just a funny little side note. There was an officer, 3rd Officer Pittman, was ordered to wake up the rest of the crew, like the officers. But he decided not to wake one officer, 5th Officer Lowe, because nobody liked him. So they just left him to sleep.
I was just like, I don't want to deal with this man.
Essentially, they just let Lowe sleep through the whole thing. So, 15 minutes after the collision is when orders began to go out to collect bread and water from the kitchens and bring them up to the deck to put into the lifeboats and to get the lifeboats ready. There is no list on the ship yet. The ship is still completely fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember in school when you're doing your work and then the fire alarm goes off? And then
and everyone's like...
and then everybody's going to get out of the school. You're 99.99% sure the school's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was what it felt like for them. So you get an idea.
So they were like, oh, it's
fine. You get an idea, right?
Yes, I do.
Pretty certain your school's not burning down.
All right. It's just a drill.
Yeah, so on the deck, nobody's ordered to go into the lifeboats yet, just to get them ready, just in case, right? It's also very, very, very loud on the deck, because the funnels are letting out steam from the boiler room. The ice water is flooding into the ship and smashing against the boiling hot boilers, which are essentially ovens at this point. They could explode, so they need to let the steam out of the ship. And just to give you an idea how loud it was, is you couldn't hear the person standing next to you. They had to yell over each other.
Holy crap.
If you remember in the movie, they had that. I'm going to bring the movie up because the movie is good quite a bit. They got a lot of things right. So, if you go back and watch it, that's in it. And you hear them yelling at each other, and it works. So, imagine this. You're on deck. It's loud. It's cold. The crew are running around. Everybody looks confused. You're dressed up in your warmest clothes. You're tired because you just got woken up and the ship is completely fine. There was no panic. There was nothing. What would you have done in this situation? I'm going to bring you into this. What would you have done?
All right. If I was an Edwardian lady on the Titanic, yes, I probably would have heard the steam, all the steam coming out of the ship, and I would have probably panicked a little bit, but also looked around and been like, oh, well, no, impossible. This is fine. Like, the ship's not sinking. Nothing's happening. There are no signs. So I probably would have picked up my 7 children and went back to my room and went back to sleep.
Just to give you a good idea of how, confident they were, The people in the lower decks of the ship fighting the water flooding into the ship also didn't think the ship was going to sink.
Oh my god.
Like, they're in there getting flooded. They're almost drowning, and they think the ship's fine. They think it's just their compartment. Yeah, they just think it's that section of the ship that's going underwater.
Well, right, because when you think about it, back when you spoke about the compartments and how you needed, well, more than 4 compartments,
Yes.
right, to be breached in order to have a sinking ship, they probably were just like, well, no, it's fine. Like, it's just my compartment. Like, we'll be good. There was a ship that got way more flooded than we did. It'll be fine. It's the Titanic.
Essentially.
That overconfidence.
Pretty much. So on the bow, there's shattered ice all over the place, and there's people picking up, playing snowballs, and they're kicking it around, which is kind of weird when you really think about it. It's an iceberg. You don't see icebergs these days, do you?
No. Well, I mean, unless you're in Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's true. So you can get a sense of the calm among the passengers when they're literally playing with the ice. So the crew is trying to set up the lifeboats. That morning, they had a lifeboat drill, right, to practice how to do it, but it was cancelled by Captain Smith. So.
He was like, we don't need those.
No, he cancelled it the day of.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So around this time, Captain Smith also orders the first-class musicians to play for the passengers to calm them down, to raise
Like
their
in the
spirits.
movie.
Yeah. No, that was real. That actually happened. The radio operators are standing by, ready to send out the messages. The lifeboats are nearly ready. And by now, Thomas Andrews, the architect, finally has their answer. The ship's going to sink.
Oh, fuck.
12:22, 42 minutes after the iceberg has struck the ship, is when they finally have their answer. 42 minutes later. Thomas Andrews said the ship will sink within an hour and it will capsize. That's what he said.
After 42 minutes or before?
After 42 minutes. After the 42 minutes, he said from an hour from now, the ship will be underwater and it will capsize.
Well then, that's very joyful news.
So, Captain Smith orders the radio operators, John Phillips and Harold Bride, to radio out for assistance. There are 2 signals sent out, CQD and SOS. SOS is the official, but CQD people mostly use at the time because SOS is still brand new. So, that's a whole episode on its own.
What's CQD?
CQ means urgent, like attention, right?
Okay.
D means distress. So attention,
Oh,
distress.
urgent.
People think it means come quickly, danger, but it's not. It's CQ, pay attention, D, distress.
Okay.
One of the first ships to respond to the distress was the German ship, the SS Frankfurt. But because of the language barrier,
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. If it was a different ship, maybe they wouldn't have. Anyways,
it
okay.
was frustrating. There is an amazing video we're going to put on our blog. It's the night. That night is the correspondent between the North. It's like a chat room, essentially. They're all talking to each other in a way. It's like a chat room, but you don't know who's online. You can't. Yeah.
Right.
Essentially, that's how they talk to each other. And the Frankfurt is. So the Titanic says, "Come quickly. We have struck an iceberg. We are sinking." And the Frankfurt says, "Okay, but what's wrong? We're sinking."
But we have hit an iceberg.
We have hit an iceberg. We are sinking. Okay, what are you sinking about?
Oh my god. That's like the most... Anyways,
I'm
yes.
skipping way too far ahead here, but I just need to add it. The Frankfurt actually did respond. And they were given the Titanic's coordinates, and they headed towards the coordinates. They were one of the closest ships. But they went to the wrong coordinates.
What?
They went to, because of the language barrier,
Oh my god.
they read it wrong, and they went to the wrong coordinates. If they went to the right coordinates, they would have made it on time.
Shaking my
Womp
head.
womp.
Oh man.
So, the SS Carpathia also received the call. So did the Olympic, the Titanic's sister ship, but they were too far away. At the time, there was pranksters. People used to radio in fake messages. You know, CQD, we're sinking, come here. And all the ships go, oh my god, and they go there and there was nothing. They would, yeah. So when the largest ship in the world on its maiden voyage says, hey, we're sinking.
No one believed them.
No, the Carpathia didn't believe them. Except for one of the radio operators on the Carpathia who was friends with the guy on the Titanic, and he believed them. And so they took it seriously, or he took it seriously, took it to the bridge, demanded he barged into the captain's sleeping quarters and said, look! And so they went.
They are singing!
Yeah, essentially. So the captain also takes it seriously. The mood on the ship is beginning to change. People can feel the list. They can see officers are worried, but never fear, because there is a ship on the horizon. They can see it. They can see a light on the horizon. Do you remember the name of that ship that I was talking about?
Not the SS Frankfurt.
No.
Not the... Oh my god, the one in the first episode. Oh my god. Steamship. Oh my god,
Californian.
Californian.
So, the Californian, they can see it. They can see the Californian. But the Californian is not coming. Their radio is off. They turned their radio off.
Right. Because he was like, shut up, I'm working.
Yes.
Oh my god.
So he said, screw it. So he went to bed. He turned off the radio. But this has got another negative effect amongst the passengers because they can see another ship, right? It's cold. It's dark. I'm not getting in that rickety boat. I'm going to stay on this luxury liner. That other ship will come rescue us, but it's not, right? So, Captain Smith orders the boats to be launched. Women and children first, right? There's a key word in there. Women and children first. What's the key word? First. Do you remember when I said the ship was really loud because of the steam?
Yes.
The orders were interpreted wrong. They thought he said women and children only. He didn't say only, he said first.
Okay, no one can see me right now, but my mouth is wide open and I'm shook.
So the first,
So
the first lifeboat was filled, quote unquote, and was launched. It was lifeboat number 7. There's enough space on the boat for 65 fully grown men. The boat launches with 27 women and children. And there are only enough lifeboats for half the amount of people on the ship.
What the fuck?
Do you know why?
Because they were overconfident?
No.
Oh no, why?
No. Because there were so many ships on the ocean at the time. It was generally believed that you could just ferry people. That's what the lifeboats were for. Were to ferry you to the other boat. And back and forth. And in a way, it's not wrong. The Californian is right there.
Right.
But the Californian isn't coming.
Because they turned their damn radio off.
And the problem...
I blame that man
another problem is...
in that post room.
More lifeboats doesn't equal more people saved. It would have cluttered the deck. People wouldn't have been able to move around to get into the lifeboats. It would have been a disaster. So, it was just circumstance, essentially. That's just how it is. So, only half the amount of people could fit on these boats. Now, third-class passengers. What do you know about the third-class passengers at this time?
Well, I know what you told me, that they weren't actually thrown in like animals. They were respectable people in respectable cabins. Well, but other than that, not much.
Well, do you remember the movie? What they did to the third-class passengers?
Did they lock them down?
No. It's a myth. That didn't happen. There's only one account of that happening, and then even then it was kind of
dramatized.
So why did so many third-class passengers die?
Why? Oh wait, did they? Oh no, I don't know. Tell me.
Because there were so many of them. The corridors were tiny. They were all trying to carry their luggage, right? Big crates. These crates had everything in them. Their entire livelihoods, everything was in these crates. And they couldn't fit through the hallways. They couldn't get up to the deck, but they were also told to stay behind. not to stay behind, but they were told to wait their turn, which they did.
Yeah.
They were told, we gotta wait until we get the order to go on deck. So they just sat by and waited. And by the time they realized, oh wait, we're sinking, it was too late.
It was too late. And they were on the bottom of the ship as well,
yeah,
right?
they were way down
so they
there.
were the first ones to flood.
Yeah, essentially.
Oh man, that's not good.
Mhm.
That's not good at all.
So, shortly after Lifeboat 7 launches, Lifeboat number 5 launches, carrying 36 passengers. As it's being lowered, a knot gets caught, as it's being lowered in one side of the lifeboat, and the other side keeps lowering, and it nearly tips over.
This literally, I feel like, okay, anyways, the Titanic was circumstance. Disaster is circumstances of disaster. Like, shit going wrong, one after the other, continuously.
Maybe if they did those lifeboat drills, we wouldn't have this problem.
Maybe.
And the most miraculous thing all night happens. Are you ready for this?
What happened? I am.
Officer Lowe wakes up.
He's like, wait a second, why didn't anybody wake me up?
He walks out on deck. May I remind you, there's rockets being launched at this time, right? Distress rockets.
Mm-hmm.
Lifeboats are being launched. You can feel a list. He walks out on deck in his pajamas. And Officer Murdoch turns to him and says, what? He's like,
what the fuck is going on right now?
Yeah, Officer Lowe says, what's going on? What's going on? And Murdoch's like, we're sinking.
We're sinking.
Go,
Surprise!
Go get your uniform on, you idiot. So he went and put on his uniform, and he grabbed his pistol as well. Not an issued pistol, it was his own private pistol.
Secret pistol.
So, an hour and 20 minutes in, lifeboats are starting to be lowered. The California is just sitting there, right? They can see the rockets, right? But why aren't they coming?
Mm-hmm. Why not?
Well,
they're all asleep.
No. They could see the rockets. But the rockets are not going up properly. They're going up different colors. They're going up different out of sequence.
So they thought they were fireworks or some shit?
They didn't know what it was. It was like, okay, that ship's just launching. But why didn't they turn on their radio to see what's going on?
Why not?
I don't know. That's the problem. We still don't know. It's
God.
one of the great mysteries of the Titanic.
They were just like,
Also, the ships...
If it is the Titanic, they can't be sinking. Whatever. I'm going back to sleep.
Also, the ship's log went missing that night as well, on the Californian. So, where did that go?
Someone's hiding something.
Yeah.
Scandalous.
So, even with the ship listing, Titanic's passengers refused to go on board. Even now, even with the ship sinking, they're still convinced that they're completely fine. Because it's -2 degrees, it's cold, and you gotta leave your husband behind. You don't want to do that. No. But the crew is also telling people to calm down. There's nothing to worry about. But if there's nothing to worry about, why am I getting in this?
Why are we getting off the ship?
Essentially. So, this is just a fun little side story here. One of the lifeboats was launched without enough crew on it. So, they stopped halfway. They yelled up, and they said, hey, we don't got enough people on it. So, Second Officer Lighthauler yells out, does anybody have any naval experience? One man, Major Arthur Puchin, a 45-year-old, said he was a yachtsman. So Lighthauler said, if you can climb down that rope, you're free to go. So he jumps, he grabs the rope, and he starts climbing down, and then he falls into the lifeboat.
Oh, okay.
He was from Montreal, by the way.
Huh. My man.
Yeah. That's where we're from.
Yeah.
Sorta. I'll be there soon. So, that's one interesting fact about him. He was the only male Officer Lighthauler let on a lifeboat that night. He was physically...
Because he was a yachtsman.
Not just that. Because of the orders, women and children only, Lighthauler was literally throwing men off the lifeboats and just wouldn't let any men go. So fun fact about our Major Arthur here, apart from the Montreal thing, is when he jumped, his wallet fell out of his pocket and fell into the ocean. They found it. We found his wallet
Where?
on the ocean floor. When they went excavating the Titanic, when we discovered it, they found his wallet. And in it, they found his business card, and they found a Toronto streetcar ticket. Yeah.
Wow! Yeah. That is archaeologically fascinating.
That's your thing.
It is my thing. I love that.
Exactly. So, he was kind of a dick, if I'm honest, as well.
He was just a piece of garbage. We don't really care about him, but we care about his wallet.
He was kind of an asshole. But anyway, so what's important about that? Why do I bring that up? Because when he started rowing away,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't believe the ship was sinking until he saw it from a distance.
Oh, okay.
So, the bow is starting to list quite a bit. It's starting to touch the waterline, and people are still, we'll be fine.
The ship's basically cracking in half, and everyone's like, it's okay! We're on the Titanic.
Yeah, so the ship started to list to port, right? Do you remember which way is port?
Okay. No.
Port.
Which way is port?
Left.
Okay.
How do you tell the difference between port and starboard?
How do you tell the difference between
How do you
port and starboard?
remember?
Okay. Well, when you're turning...
No. I'm saying is how do you tell which is port and starboard? I don't know. You as a person who's just not going the ship. Right?
How do you tell the difference? Tell me.
Port and left have 4 letters.
And starboard is the other one.
Right. So the ship.
Okay.
That was a lot just to tell you the ship's starting to list a little bit. So the ship is starting to list to port. Remember Thomas Andrews said the ship's going to tip over, right? Well, he was wrong. But at the time, it's starting to list.
Okay.
So, and people are starting to realize, oh crap, I think we're starting to sink. So panic starts to set in on the deck.
Oh no. Yeah. And now everyone's trying to get off the ship as quickly as possible.
Yep. So during the panic, men started rushing Lifeboat 14, which was manned by Officer Lowe, our favorite guy.
Mm-hmm.
And
our man.
He fired his pistol 3 times to stop people from boarding his lifeboat. See, it comes back later. I mentioned it earlier.
It does come back. There you go.
2 hours after the collision, they started pulling out the emergency collapsible lifeboats. The lifeboats that are stowed away, essentially. There's 3 of them. Lifeboat C is starting to get lowered, and there is 1 passenger on that lifeboat who should not be on that lifeboat. Who? Bruce Ismay.
The man. The myth. The legend.
I'm going to call you out here. I think you're being dramatic for nothing. Who's Bruce Ismay?
He's the one in charge. Well, he's the one either who owns the ship or
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Okay. The chairman.
That's why. Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, he either owns the ship or he has something, like he has shares in the ship. Like the ship is partially his.
He doesn't own, it's his ship. He's the chairman of the White Star Line. He owns the whole company.
Okay.
Right. He jumps in a lifeboat and he gets rescued. His excuse was that there were no more women and children around for him to rescue. So
he was like, oh, might as well.
I'm going to jump in the boat. There is a debate whether he was a coward or not, because before that, he really was helping people. He was literally throwing women into lifeboats. At one point, he tried to lower a lifeboat himself, but the crew had to hold him back at gunpoint.
Oh,
the man was mentally unstable that night.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like maybe there's a possibility that he was throwing women and children into lifeboats because he wanted to get onto one as quickly as possible, and he knew the women and children were going to be going on first.
Possible.
And, well, the women and children only up until there's no more women and children, right? So he was just trying to rush that as quickly as possible to get the fuck off of the boat, I think.
It's a lose-lose situation for him, essentially. It's either you die on the ship or you go home and be shamed as a coward and a murderer. Which do you choose? What do you choose in that situation?
Yeah, I would die on the ship. I mean, you know, the captain goes down with his ship, but if you're the freaking owner of the entire line,
Yeah.
you're gonna go home and be like, yeah, well, you know, it's fine. No, you do not.
So the propellers are starting to raise out of the ocean. The lights are beginning to flicker a little bit on the ship. Pandemonium sets in, and the telegraph operator Phillips is still going. He is still telling people to come rescue us.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Smith enters the room, and they are just pale. Right? Phillips has been sitting there for 2 hours staring at the wall in front of him. Just dee. And Captain Smith looks the same. He walks in behind them and just walks behind Phillips and stares at the exact same spot. The other operator, Harold Bride, is... What the hell? Because these two men look like they've seen a ghost, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And Captain Smith says, it's time to go. You've done your duty. Abandon your post. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Phillips stays. He keeps Harold is trying to pull him away, saying, look, we gotta go. The radio is off. It's flooded. The line has been cut. He's literally messaging nobody at this point. But he keeps going.
God.
He's just sitting there. We don't know if it was shock or if he actually thought something's going up. I think he was shocked because he was staring.
I think he was shocked too.
Phillips.
Shock and hope mixed together.
I suppose. Phillips. Oh, man. So, at this point, Captain Smith walks out on the deck. He goes to the bridge and he picks up his megaphone, right?
Mm.
And he goes and he yells at the lifeboats, come back to the ship. Come back and pick up passengers, but nobody comes.
Mm-hmm.
And the bow is now going underwater. The ship is rising faster and faster. And then Captain Smith says, every man for himself. That's it. There's nothing more we can do. And then he disappears into the officers' quarters. And he's never seen again.
Did he sink with the ship?
Yes. Yes, he's gone.
Oh.
But just imagine what's going through his mind. Him and Thomas Andrews. Just imagine what's going through their mind right now. Their ship is sinking. Captain Smith, this was his last ever voyage. He was famous for his... Fame was weird back then, but he was famous. He had statues of himself, right? He was the captain of ships in the world. And this was his last voyage, and it's sinking. He blames himself. He thinks this is his fault. Thousands of people are going to die. He knows there's not enough lifeboats. He knows they're all leaving half full. He knows everybody's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
What goes through your mind at that point? You know?
Just...
His career led up to that moment.
Yeah.
Every mistake he made was leading to that moment.
Mm-hmm. Every mistake and success he made
led
him to that moment. And I mean, when you're a famous person, in his head, he was probably like, I am the best, I am fantastic. And then the moment that ship started sinking, I would not be surprised if his whole life flashed before his eyes.
Essentially.
You know, it's so cliche, but yeah.
Where did I go wrong, essentially?
Exactly. What happened? How did I get here?
I think he knew exactly what he did, because ignoring iceberg warnings and stuff, but that's just years.
Definitely.
That's just, he's probably crossed the Atlantic hundreds of times. Maybe thousands. So at 2:10 p.m. is when it starts getting real.
Mm-hmm.
Water is now spilling onto the main deck of the ship, and it is going down quickly. The band starts playing their final song, Nearer My God to Thee, which we will play at the end of this episode. They toss collapsible lifeboat off the roof of the officers' quarters. They had no way of getting the lifeboat off the top because they thought they would never use it. So they literally just pushed it off, and it flips upside down. And they can't flip it back over again, right? On the other side of the ship, collapsible A, it's tied down. It's going to go down with the ship unless they can cut those ropes. They start cutting it with knives. It doesn't work. One of the ship's officers started using his pistol, started shooting the ropes. It wasn't working. And eventually the lifeboat starts tipping. And all the passengers inside the lifeboat fall out. Women and children. Yeah. And then at this point is when the funnel starts to creak. And it starts to tip.
Fuck.
And the funnel falls on top of people. And then the water is still rising. It is rising. Glass on the ship is starting to break. People are getting sucked into the ship, including Lorraine Allison, the only first-class child to die on the Titanic, was sucked into the ship.
Oh my god, what a way to
It is
die.
going down fast. It is going down extremely fast. The second funnel explodes. It literally explodes from the bottom. So it is thrown, and it crashes into the gymnasium and then falls onto more people. The grand staircase breaks. The water starts flooding in, and there's a whirlpool. Because it is a grand staircase, and people are being sucked into the whirlpool. And it is just absolute pandemonium. Because this is it. The ship is starting to go down faster and faster and faster. It starts raising up and up and up. And then the creaking, loud noise. And
oh no,
and
the ship's cracking in half.
And as soon as the ship cracks, the lights go out. And it crashes down onto people. It breaks just forward of the third funnel. And it lands on people, obviously, which is not fun.
Clearly.
But there are still 1,500 people on the ship, holding on for dear life. And it sits there for a little bit, laying straight, while the front of the ship is straight down, still holding on.
Mm-hmm.
And then it breaks off. And then the Titanic begins to raise up, still listing to port, more and more to port.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts plunging further and further until it's gone.
Oof.
The people in the lifeboats can't see this, by the way. They can see the silhouette, but they can't see anything. It's just a black outline. Which is where the debate of where did the ship break in half was a huge debate for many, many, many years until they found it in half. I forgot to mention, as the ship is going under, water is flowing into the ship faster than air can escape. So windows are exploding. The back of the ship is exploding. People are being thrown into the ocean. And it's not fun.
No. Really not. Oh no.
The water is -2 degrees. 1,500 people are plunged into it. And they have nothing to do but scream.
Mm-hmm.
The people in the lifeboats can't do anything. They had to sit there and listen to their friends, their husbands, sons, parents, children, everybody screaming for their lives. Half-empty lifeboats that could do nothing. But then the screaming starts to quiet and quiet and quiet. It takes about 2 minutes for you to die because the water is so cold. You can also hear the ship below you exploding, crashing, tumbling into the ocean, the ocean floor.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth Officer Lowe, our favorite guy, is the only officer to go back. He brings lifeboats together and he empties his lifeboat and he heads back. He waits a little bit first, actually. Forgot to mention, he waits a little bit for things to calm down. Which was too long. It takes 2 minutes for them to die. And he waited far, far too long. And they get back and it's just a sea of corpses and debris. Women, children, mostly men. I think he mentioned he couldn't see any women. It was only men. They came across one man, a Chinese man, who fashioned himself a raft. He was a sailor back in China. He fashioned himself a raft, and he cried out for help, and he in his native tongue. But Officer Lowe said, "What's the use? He's likely dead, and if he isn't, there's others worth better saving than a Jap."
Wow.
But
the racism.
he decided the man's cries were too pathetic. So they went and they picked him up. They pulled him into the lifeboat. He was frozen. He could barely move.
Mm-hmm.
One of the men on the oars was exhausted. So the Chinese man got up and started oaring for him. He said he oared like a hero. And Officer Lowe was ashamed of himself. He said, I'd save the likes of him 6 times if I ever had the chance. They picked up 3 more people. One of them died. So only 3 people were saved from the water. Out of 1,500 people, 3 were saved. According to Lowe, you could hear muffled cries throughout the whole thing. People were still alive, but he couldn't find them. It was pitch black. The ocean was pitch black. And people they were just moving. Like, they couldn't move. And they just sat there and screamed for help. And there was nothing he could do because he couldn't find them. So they just sat there and froze to death. So for the next hour and a half, the lifeboats had nothing to do but sit there. They didn't know what was going to happen next. They didn't know a ship was coming to save them. They just sat there in the cold and just waited. And then the Carpathia arrived, firing rockets in the distance to let them know they were there. One of the lifeboats, if you remember back, I said there was a lifeboat that tipped over. There were 14 people on the tip over lifeboat, including Light Aller and the 2 radio operators, Phillips and the other one. Phillips said, it's the Carpathia, right on time, and then died. Those are his last words. He only cared about getting people saved, and then he saw the Carpathia, and he's like, alright, good, and then he died. He was in the water a lot longer than the others on the lifeboat 14.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he died. Hypothermia. So over the next 4 hours, 712 people were rescued and brought onto the Carpathia. The President of the United States sent out a battleship to escort the Carpathia, just in case. And can you imagine what it'd be like? Remember I said the radio chat room, what it was like for them? Mm-hmm. The Titanic has vanished. The Carpathia then vanishes off the radar too. They are still going. Did Titanic, are you okay? We're on our way. Don't worry. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the Carpathia radio is out. 705 saved. Carry on your route. And that was it. And that is the Titanic.
Whoa. Round of applause. Imagine though being in a boat and hearing 705 saved, knowing full well there are way more people on the Titanic than that. Wow. Just continue on your routes.
They got the number wrong too.
We only saved 705. How many actually survived?
712 were saved, but they said 705 were saved, so they miscounted. So.
Wow.
Just a little.
But, okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So, when they were saving people, the people who were being saved on lifeboats, so the women and children that were being saved, I guess they were majoritarily first-class passengers, second-class passengers, and third-class passengers were kind of just sucked down into the depths of the ocean because, I mean, when you think about it, if they went in and they didn't find any women and children, there had to be more in third class. But they were just kind of thrown down into the ocean, I suppose.
There were third-class survivors, obviously, but not many. Mostly women, not many.
Okay.
A few days later, there was a ship called the Mackie Bennett that was sent out to rescue. It was a cable ship. And they were sent out to collect bodies. And as they were picking people up, they were looking through their clothes to identify them and stuff. And to be brought back. Third-class passengers were thrown overboard. They made priority for the first class. Okay,
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, considering... who was the richest person on the Titanic? Because in the end, like, there had to be some pretty important people.
There were tons.
Like, a lot of money on the Titanic.
One of them is Isidore. His first name is Isidore. He was the chairman of Macy's.
Macy's? Like the department store?
And he died on it. If you remember in the movie, there was a man and his wife cuddling in the bed.
Yes.
That was true. Sort of.
Huh.
She refused to go. Isidore and Isa Strauss. That's it. Strauss. Ida refused to go on the lifeboat. She refused to leave him behind. They were elderly. They'd been married for years. Decades.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, the last words people heard them say was, Isidore, where you go, I go. She wouldn't leave him.
That's so cute.
The bed story is not true. Laying in bed together, because they found his body in the water. They didn't find her, but they found him.
Ooh, that's suspicious.
Yeah. Well...
And she didn't make it off the boat?
No, neither of them did. They both died.
But they didn't find Ida's body.
They didn't find Ida's body. They found Isidore's. But she...
Where did they find Isidore's?
It's in the water. Like, you gotta remember, this was
in the
days
water
later,
randomly.
right? People were...
Okay, yeah.
Bodies were washing up on shore in Newfoundland weeks later. Yeah.
Poor fishermen.
300 bodies were brought back. Were rescued from the water.
Okay.
Those that were too decomposed, they threw back overboard.
Okay.
Going back to answer your question, who was the richest man on the ship was a man called John Jacob Astor. Who was he? He was a millionaire. A millionaire tycoon. You know.
Okay.
And he's very scandal. You like scandal, don't you?
I do. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, he brought on his new wife, right? His new wife. Okay. She was pregnant too. And she was 18 years old and he was 50-something.
The hell? Okay.
Or 40-something. One of the two. And
doesn't matter. Still an old man.
The scandal is his oldest son is older than his wife.
That is so bad.
His son is 25
oh, man.
And his wife is 18.
Oof.
Yeah. And one thing I find really interesting is if you go back and you look at newspapers from the Titanic, the headline is Titanic sink, J.J. Astor perishes. He has as much of a headline as the Titanic. There was one point I saw, it was a giant picture of John Jacob Astor and a little picture of Titanic next to it. You know?
They were like, this man's way more important.
Essentially,
everyone's going to want to know about him more.
It's weird how he has such a priority in the newspaper. Nobody knows who he is today. But I'm wondering who was he then? You know, how famous was he to get such a headline?
Well, I feel like, the culture still stands today when you think about it, about like tycoon, real estate tycoons, billionaires. If let's say, I don't know, well, look what happened with Jeffrey Epstein, for example. You know, like he, in the end, no one really knew who he was, what he did. He was just kind of there. But as soon as scandal hit and he died, everybody was talking about Jeffrey Epstein, right?
Perhaps. That's your
I have
field.
A feeling, yeah. But when you think about it, it's, people, especially in North America, we value wealth. And when someone is very rich for doing what seems to be absolutely nothing, everybody becomes interested in them and wants to know how they made it, right? Rockefeller, same thing. It's kind of same thing with that family as well, you know, like very rich people who own a lot of real estate, and everyone's just like, how the fuck did you get there? Like, how did you become this rich? I want that too. And with that much wealth comes a lot of power, and I wouldn't be surprised that if he got that much of a headline in newspapers, he had to be, people had to care about him in some way, shape, or form. At least rich people in the world had, in, let's say, the United States or in Britain, cared about him in some shape, way, or form. So, yeah, it's not surprising that he got a big headline. Yeah. But what did he do? How did he get there? Why was he so important?
The Astor family is still rich, too. They have an estate down in... I saw an interview with them. They had their own country club and stuff. And they were like, Oh, yes. Yeah.
Old money,
Yeah, I
man.
know.
Old money. It's disgusting.
So,
But, yeah.
what was I going to talk about? Yeah, so the Titanic's sister ship, the next sister ship, the Britannic, sank in 90... Christ, I forget. It sank during the war, right? Which is interesting because the Titanic, the two ships that came after the Olympic was the test ship, essentially, and the two ships that came after it sank. So the test ship survived the whole thing.
Okay.
So, just a weird thought.
Yeah. I have a question. Yeah. Which was the ship that got pierced?
Pierced? Like the
Olympic?
Olympic?
The one that had 4 compartments. It was the Olympic that got...
Yeah.
Okay.
And Captain Smith was the captain of the Olympic at the time that happened, which is also enforces enforces his non-sinkable thing because he lived it. Again, working against him.
But also, I don't know, man. Listen, just the fact that he was the captain of that ship when it got, they hit an iceberg, right?
Yeah.
The Olympic?
No, the Olympic got hit by another ship.
Okay. Yeah. So the Olympic got hit by another ship while Captain Smith was
captaining
of this ship. And it didn't... Okay, yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Just the fact that it got hit and it got pierced and... I don't know, man. It's suspicious. It's suspect. It's suspect. I am suspicious in the unsinkable nature of these ships, or the thought process behind that. I mean, where did that come from originally? Did the Olympic come out with the idea that it was unsinkable as well, or was that just the Titanic?
Yeah, no, the Olympic was unsinkable as well, and it reinforced it because it was hit by...
Right, exactly. Yeah. But where did that notion come from? Why did people think it was so unsinkable?
Just general...
Was it like the...
arrogance.
Just the architecture?
Remember the Costa Concordia cruise ship that sank?
Yes, I do.
Before that happened, could you imagine a cruise ship like that sinking?
No, not particularly.
Same concept. Back then.
Okay.
It was just the idea that these ships are so big, so grand, so safe that they just can't sink.
Okay. That makes sense.
Same as today.
So it's not really based in any fact, or they didn't really build the Olympic and the Titanic in a different way. Like, it was just a regular old ocean liner. And the incident with the Olympic is what made everyone think the Titanic was super unsinkable.
Well, essentially, it was
because it was a sister ship.
It was also marketing as well when you really think about it.
Yeah. It's like, come on our ship, you won't die.
It's unsinkable and luxurious.
No chance you'll die.
No. Oh, sorry.
That is disturbing in so many ways. Wow. Yeah. And then, like, what was the aftermath of this? Like, what happened with White Star Line?
Well, Bruce Ismay obviously survived. He was shamed and he resigned and he was completely thrown out. They had to... Okay. The concept of safety was thrown out the window. They had to rethink everything. And if you look at the Britannic and how it sets up its lifeboats, it's interesting. I recommend go look up Britannic, HMS Britannic, and eventually, I'm pretty sure these were the last good liners of White Star Line. World War I came right around the corner as well, so they lost a whole bunch of money in that, and it sort of overshadowed the Titanic sinking as well. And eventually, Cunard and Titanic merged, because the government forced them to merge, and it became the Cunard White Star Line. Okay. And eventually, it changed to just Cunard. The White Star was completely thrown out the window.
No one cared about White Star anymore. Their name is tainted.
It was cursed.
So in the end, I mean, they did lose money, but they also lost money because of the First World War. So in the end, like, it just, everything happened at really bad times for the liner industry.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be alive today either way.
No, exactly. But I mean, regardless, I mean, even if the Titanic didn't happen, the sinking of the Titanic didn't happen, I have a feeling that the ocean liner companies would have gone down the drain to a certain extent anyways because of the war.
Not just that, it's because of airplanes. Airplanes killed the ocean liner industry. Why
Also.
sail?
But I mean, that was because of the First World War, no? Like, the technologies behind aviation improved because of the First World War, no?
Second World War is what improved to the idea of being able to fly across the ocean.
Okay,
The First World War was just a
least...
dent. It was a big dent because all their ships got taken by the British government and transformed into what's the word? They transported troops. They sent troop ships. That's the word, troop ships. Yeah. They became troop ships for people, including the Olympic.
Okay.
And during the war, Olympic was named Old Reliable because it had a habit of running over ships.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it crashed into a U-boat. Not a U-boat, but a submarine. They saw a submarine, so they just went full speed ahead and ran it over. Yeah.
What in the hell?
And then
okay.
I think 5 years before Olympic was just like taken apart, it accidentally ran over another ship, so it got very known for crashing into ships.
They are the tank of the ship world.
But it survived. It survived the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the unsinkable ship.
Essentially, yeah. It was the Olympic all along.
Man, they shouldn't have based themselves on the Titanic, but what can you do? Yeah. And then in terms of like, just people's confidence in ocean liners, did that waver at all? Or
there was no alternative. So the Olympic went on for... The Olympic's a good example of, the Olympic went on for at least, I think, 30 years. 20 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it went on for another 20 years. So obviously it didn't make that much of a dent. It just made a dent in the idea of safety. Right? People still had to cross the ocean. They still had to immigrate and visit their families and do business. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it made much of an impact.
Okay. And then in terms of safety, like what changed? What did they do better?
More lifeboats. More training. More lifeboats. More training. Because
more safety measures, protocols.
Because the idea of ferrying people doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So everything works until it doesn't.
And then how did they manage to put more lifeboats on the ship? In the end,
they put them on top of each other, which is why I said go look at a picture of the Britannic. You can see it. You can see the lifeboats. Okay. It's like a mechanism that lowers, right? It lowers one, you board it, you lower that ship, and another one comes down. Like a sideways vending machine in a way.
Yeah.
Put your quarter in and you get saved.
You won't die today.
Exactly.
All right. I think those are all my questions for today.
That's all?
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you have? Extra things
I could go on for hours, but
But
I don't want to start saying wrong things,
Ooh, actually, I do have another question. So, when passengers got back to shore, what were they talking? How do we know all the information we know about the Titanic? Considering we never found the wreck until recently.
It's the inquiries, essentially. Everybody was questioned. Everybody was asked what happened, blah, blah, blah. And the trials that went on, and the press were there waiting, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this answers your question, but this is just another side fun note. The first lifeboat to launch, I can't remember her freaking name, but there was an actress on that lifeboat, right? Okay. And she was famous. She was absolutely... she was the most famous actress, the most well-paid actress at the time. She was on the Titanic. And as soon as she got on the Carpathia, she started writing down her story, right? And then she got to shore, and her manager, the boss of the film company, forced her to make a movie based on her experience.
Oh my God. And she did?
So the first ever Titanic movie came out 29 days after the ship sank. Starring...
That was a fast filming.
Starring the actress on the Titanic.
Wow.
Her own story, sort of.
That's impressive. Yeah.
It was a love story as well. Kind of weird. Why is...
Just like this new one.
Why is sinking in the Atlantic so romantic?
It's futile. Star-crossed lovers destined to die.
It's a lost film now, unfortunately. The movie studio burned down along with the film.
What in the hell? Okay.
In 1914. She lost her mind as well. while filming the movie, she would have constant mental breakdowns. And
Oh, shit.
and that was her last movie. She quit acting.
She was like, I'm
She's
done. I can't
Yeah,
do this anymore.
Moved to Paris. And
As they do.
and became a Nazi. Signs. Yeah,
What?
she was a Nazi sympathizer.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What's her name?
I can't remember. I'll put it into the blog. I'll make sure it's in the blog because
Okay.
she's got a really interesting story.
Sounds good. I will. Do you have the story anywhere? Like, is there the written story that she had? Well, hold on. Let me restart that sentence because wow. Is the story that she wrote down still intact?
I'm not sure. I will look into that
It
for
might
you.
be. That would be really interesting to read.
I'm sure the movie is out there somewhere because it was distributed like planet wide.
It has to be.
It was a smash hit at the time. It was incredibly popular. People were like, okay, well, why are you making money off this disaster? You know.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, that also makes me wonder. Like, there have been so many ships that probably sank similarly to the Titanic.
Yeah.
What is it about the Titanic that is so popular? I mean, yeah, unsinkable ship, but
it's
what the hell,
I think it's because number one, the survivors, right? One, because it was so well documented, because it was the largest ship in the world, because it was her maiden voyage, how she sank too. James Cameron himself said it could not have sunk more perfectly. It is the perfect story. That's why there have been so many movies, because it's the perfect sequence. There's a beginning, middle, and end to the ice. Yeah.
It's really a story in the end.
It is.
But how much of that story is because it came from people?
Most of it.
Like, right, exactly. Like, most of the story that we get has a beginning, middle, and end, because in the end, I feel like that's how humans describe events, right? There has to be, it's a narrative in the end. And it makes me wonder if, the story of the Titanic really was the perfect sinking, or if it was just made out to be the perfect sinking because of the recollection of the passengers in the end.
I think it was the perfect sinking. It was
Really?
everything led up to it, right? Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It was like domino effect.
Yeah, right.
So many things in the past led up to that moment. And so many famous people on it. You're right, though, because of the story that was told after. The mystery. Did she break in half? Did she not break in half?
Yeah. Where did it break in half? Where is the ship? It disappeared.
There's no camera footage of it, so there's...
Yeah, of course.
So...
Yeah. I think also, I mean, was it always this popular, though? Like, even when it was sinking?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone was talking about it?
Oh, yes.
Damn,
it was worldwide news. Oh man, you couldn't get away from it.
Well, I mean, it makes me think of the first episode of Downton Abbey.
That's essentially how it went. It was
you open the newspaper. Oh my goodness, the Titanic is sinking. The next day, holy shit, the First World War is starting.
yeah. It was. I think the First World War is what I don't want to say killed the Titanic's interest, but
It probably did.
Yes, but it was huge news.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the First World War in the end. It's a big thing in itself, so I wouldn't be surprised if it did kill the enthusiasm around the Titanic.
Pretty much. But yeah.
Yeah.
There was it's two things I'm going to leave this on. During the inquiries, during the trials, they asked one of the officers, describe the screaming.
Oh my god. What kind of question is that? First of all.
That's how we know so much, is because they asked so many questions.
Yeah.
And they said, describe the screaming. And he couldn't. He couldn't. He said it was the worst sound I've ever heard in my life. And then he stops. And then he realizes, no, it wasn't. It was the silence that followed. It was the worst sound.
Because you knew
I have ever heard in my life. Just to put into perspective of... And that actress, she was forced to recreate that days after it happened.
Oh my god. Poor girl.
Yeah.
It must really be traumatizing. When you think about it, you can't see anything. Nothing's going on. It's just sounds, right? Like, oof. And you can't do anything about it because you can't see anybody. In a way, it's almost... I feel like it might have been worse that they couldn't see anything. Because it's the biggest form of helplessness. Like, feeling helpless, right? You can't see what's going on. You can't help anybody because you don't know where they are. And it's just, and you hear them screaming until they stop screaming. And that's when like, they've died, or they've frozen to death. So. Yeah, no.
I shall end this on something I heard. It's very poetic. I thought it was poetic. Some people would find it cheesy. But on the ship, the only thing between you and a sheet of metal is eternity.
Let's absorb that. Yeah. How would you interpret that, sir?
Sir, how do I interpret that?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, I don't know. That's
the only thing between you and a sheet of metal is eternity.
The only thing you could change it. I think the only thing between you and eternity is a sheet of metal, something like that.
The only thing between you and eternity is a sheet of metal. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah. Wow. And then everyone died.
Yeah. Well, I hope we all learned something today.
We did. We are ending this on a tragic note,
well,
as it
how
should.
Could it be ended?
As it should end. As it should.
So, are you doing a special episode next week, or shall we go back to our usual until you find something special?
No, I think we'll go back to our usual until we find something special.
Well, next one's yours, so.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
I think I know what I'm going to talk about. Surprise!
Oh no. All right.
All right, everyone. All right, Thomas. Thank you for imparting your wisdom on Titanic to all of us. It's duly much appreciated.
You're very welcome. I'll be here next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.